Welcome back, everyone. If this is your first time joining us, a very warm welcome to you. And if you've been watching this series, it's really lovely to have you back. We are working our way through Chapter 4 of Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. And this chapter has a very interesting title, Mind Strategies for Avoiding the Now. In this video, we are going to look at what Eckhart calls the co-delusion, the central misunderstanding that causes most of our inner suffering. And we are going to look at how the journey back to presence actually works in real life, because it's not what most people expect. So let's settle in. Before we dive in, let's just take a moment to remember where we have been. In Chapter 3, Eckhart introduces us to something really profound. He talked about moving deeply into the now, not just visiting it for a moment, but actually learning to live there. He explained that the present moment is the only place where life actually happens. The past is a memory, the future is a thought. The only thing that is real right now in this is this moment. He also introduces the idea of clock time versus psychological time. Clock time is useful, it helps us plan, organize, function in the world. But psychological time, that endless replaying of past, that constant worrying about future, that is what causes us to suffer. And the key insight from Chapter 3 was this: when we step out of psychological time and simply be here, there's a natural peace available to us. Not a peace we have to create or earn, a peace that is already here, waiting. So that is foundation we are standing on as we move into Chapter 4. The first slides give us a kind of map of everything we will cover, not just today, but across all the videos in this chapter. On the left, we can see the two levels of unconsciousness, ordinary and deep. On the right, we see the strategies for dissolving them. And in the middle, cutting through everything, is that one word that Eckhart keeps bringing back to us: now. It might look complex at first glance, but don't worry, we are going to go through each piece slowly and carefully. By the end of this series, the whole picture will make complete sense. For now, just notice the overall shape of the journey, from consciousness, unconsciousness, to awareness, to presence. That is what this chapter is about. The mind has strategies. It has ways of keeping us away from the present moment. Not because the mind is evil or wrong, but because the thinking mind, left to its own devices, is simply always going somewhere else. Always in the past, always in the future, rarely, if ever, simply here. Look at the image on the slide. The arrows pointing in every direction, bursting outward from the mind like sparks from a fire. That's such a good picture of what the undirected mind actually does. Constantly moving, constantly projecting. And the question this chapter asks us is, what would happen if we stopped? What if instead of following all those arrows outward, we turn our attention inward and simply land here? That is the exploration ahead of us. An exploration into the mechanics of unconsciousness, the ego, the path back to presence. So Eckhart begins this chapter by imagining a conversation, someone pushing back on these ideas. and the person asks something very reasonable. They say, even if I accept that the time is an illusion, I still have to pay my bills tomorrow. I still have to grow old. So how can any of this actually makes any difference? An Eckhart answer is fascinating. He says, tomorrow's bills is not a problem. Growing old is not a problem. The real core problem is something he calls the loss of now. He says, there is a core delusion at work in most human minds, and this delusion takes ordinary situations, things that are simply events, simple facts of life, and turns them into personal problems, into suffering. Think about a bill. A bill arrives in the post. As a fact, it's simply a piece of paper. It is what it is. But the mind doesn't leave it there. Mind starts a story. I can't afford this. Something is wrong with me. What if I can't pay it? What does this say about my life? The bill hasn't changed, but the suffering has been added by the mind through its resistance to what is. Or think about getting older. Aging is simply a natural process, but the mind turns into a problem, something to fight against, to dread, to mourn. Eckhart says, this is a co-delusion, the habit of turning situations into suffering, the habit of making the present moment into an enemy. He says it's so simply at the bottom of the slide. Loss of now is the loss of being. When we lose contact with the present moment, we lose contact with the very aliveness within us. With what he calls being. That quiet, steady, alive presence underneath all the thinking. And then he says something equally important. He says that intellectual agreement with this idea is not enough. It's not enough to nod along and say, yes, that's true. To realize this truth, we have to live it, we have to feel it in our bodies, in our daily moments. That's the difference between knowing something in our heads and actually being free. Eckhart says, to be free of time does not mean that we never think about the past or future. It means something much more specific. It means being free of psychological need of the past and the future. What does that mean in plain language? The ego. And when we say ego here, we simply mean the part of us built from thoughts and stories about who we are. The ego needs the past for its identity. It needs to keep telling the story of what happened to us, who wronged us, who we used to be, and what we have been through. Think of that person at a party who, every time a new topic comes up, steers the conversation back to something that happened to them 10 years ago. The past is their anchor. Their identity is there. And the ego needs the future for its fulfillment. It needs to believe that happiness, peace, wholeness, all of that is just around the corner. When the job gets better, when the relationship improves, when things finally settle down, then we will be okay. think of a feeling of waiting for a holiday, as if life only truly starts once we get on that plane. Eckhart says this is a trap. When we are psychologically hooked into past for who we are and the future for our contentment, we miss the only moment in which the life is actually happening. This moment, right now. And to be free of time means to gradually release that psychological grip. Not to stop planning, not to pretend the past didn't happen, but to no longer need it, to no longer depend on it for our sense of self or our sense of being okay. This is what Eckhart calls one of the most profound transformations of consciousness possible. Now, many people come to teachings like this and they expect one big moment of transformation, one breakthrough, one awakening, and after that, done, free, present forever. But this is not how it works for most people. Eckhart says, for some rare people, a shift in consciousness happens suddenly and dramatically, usually through great suffering, through a moment of total surrender when mind simply cannot continue. But most of us, for vast majority, it is a more gradual journey. It's like pendulum, moving between two states. On one side, time and mind identification, being lost in thoughts, pulled into past, projecting into future. And on the other side, presence, the now, that quiet aliveness. And Eckhart says, we will swing back and forth many times, and this is not a failure. This is the process. And let's say we are sitting quietly and we have a brief moment of stillness, a real moment of presence. And then a thought arrives. I wonder if I left the oven on. And we are gone again, back in the mind. And that is completely normal. The key insight in this slide is right here in the middle, realizing that our attention is rarely in the now. It's not a failure. That's noticing. That's a moment of awareness, and that itself is presence. Think of it this way. Imagine we are walking and we trip over a step. The moment we notice we have tripped, we are already recovering our balance. We couldn't notice the trip if we weren't at some level aware. The same is true here. The moment we notice we have been lost in thought, we are already in that very moment present again. And Eckhart reassures us, over time these moments of presence grow, they expand, they last longer, and gradually the presence becomes our predominant state. The home we return to again and again, more easily and more naturally. So in this first video, we have laid down the foundation. We have understood what the core delusion actually is. Not tomorrow bills, not the future, not the circumstances of life, but the loss of contact with now itself. We have seen how mind uses the past and future as psychological anchors, and how freedom means releasing that grip. And we have seen that awakening is not one big dramatic event, or for most of us it is gentle, back and forth journey where every moment of noticing is itself a victory. In the next video, we are going to go deeper. We are going to look at two levels of unconsciousness, ordinary and deep, and understand why so many people walk through life in a kind of waking sleep without even realizing it. If this is resonating with you, please do take a moment to like this video. It really does help other people find this content. And if you would like to continue this journey together, subscribe to this channel, and that way you won't miss the next part. We'll see you in next video. Thank you.